Well, the Warriors hold for a final shot.
Under 10. Latrobe could give a foul.
And it rolls in for Ponko. Wildcats are going to run out of time as Ponko wins it for Penn-Trafford. This is the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Jack Ridenauer and Sean Myers.
Welcome into another episode of the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast here on the Westmoreland Sports Network's YouTube channel. Sean Myers joined by the one and only Jack Ridenauer. Happy New Year, Jack. 2026 already underway. We've got a big show to celebrate the new year. Of course, we will have our plays of the week. Our team of the week, the Jeannette boys, off to another great start, of course, expected for the defending WPIAL champions, as well as a look ahead at a very busy week as we kind of get back into the full swing of things in terms of section play at the high school level. But we'll begin with our starting five takeaways, the biggest stories from not just the past week, but really the last 2 weeks, going back to right before Christmas. And we'll start with Norwin girls because they are a team that has opened a lot of eyes. They're always in that conversation in 6A. They got some payback for their loss in the championship. They won at Upper St. Clair. 4 different players scoring in double figures for the Knights. And I think right now it's pretty clear they have been the most impressive team in 6A, even though they were a little under the radar heading into the season.
Without question. And Sean, Happy New Year and happy holidays to you too, my friend. Yes. Any New Year's resolutions?
No, I try to just generally make I want to be better as a person, better in certain regards, because if you set a goal pretty quickly, it's a failed goal and then you just give up all hope. So a little bit more vague with long-term aspirations, I suppose.
No, I like that. That's a great approach. But really the approach for Norwin has been fantastic this year. I think this is arguably the best job within recent memory that Coach Brzezinski has done because of what was left from last year, right? I mean, how much was lost to graduation? You graduate 4 of your 5 starters who were part of 2 WPIAL championship runs. And you look at Norwin, and like you said, Sean, not many people thought much of the Knights coming into this year, and then all of a sudden they have taken the WPIAL by storm. I've really loved the way that Nia Obardo has been playing. I think that she has been a huge difference maker, especially scoring the ball. I love her intensity that she plays with. And then Ava Christopher, I mean, we've seen her be the defensive stalwart that she's been the last few years, and now she's being the leading scorer. So a huge role change for her, and she's been able to take it on beautifully.
Yeah, and she led them in scoring against Upper St. Clair with 14. Obardo and Aubrey Graney each had a dozen in that game. And, they maybe don't have a Kendall Berger or a Lauren Pelangio, which is just a player that they can, count on to score 15, 20 points every single game or gobble up rebounds. But I think that they're a very balanced and diverse group. Now, they're at 9-0, and the question I have is did we maybe overrate Upper St. Clair a little bit? They're the defending champions, but they've had a rough season. They're 3-7. So you don't want to overreact to just one game like this, but it certainly looks like, with the Knights getting this win, that's probably a little bit of a redemption for some of the girls that were on the wrong side of it last year. And they should be very confident heading into 2026 because not only are they faring well in section, but we know they always test themselves with an on-section. That's something that Brian Brzezinski always wants to have his team prepared as best possible by playing the best competition, whether it be in 6A or outside of it.
And on top of it, about Upper St. Clair, it graduated a lot of key players from last year as well. It was a very senior-laden team. I remember in the regular season when Upper St. Clair played Norwin, Upper St. Clair ran away with it at Norwin. And a lot of it was because of the experience that the Upper St. Clair Panthers had. But yeah, I think this Knights team is something interesting to watch. Obviously, will be a very tough section, and we'll get into Hempfield girls basketball in a little bit. But I think that's going to be a really interesting showdown in a couple weeks. Actually, I think about a week from now on January 12th. So question will be, can Norwin keep things rolling? Does the steam kind of start to fizzle away, or does it keep going? And could this be a team where we're talking about them like we talked about Penn-Trafford girls last year, maybe making a perfect run in the playoffs?
Well, a team that's not going to make a perfect run, but has quite a knack for rallying in games now is Penn-Trafford boys. And I was on the call when they stunned Greater Latrobe. PT was down 15 at the half at Greater Latrobe. They came back and won the game on a near buzzer beater, their second consecutive game that they won it with maybe 2 or 3 seconds left when the game winner went in. Nick Ponko this time was the hero. Peyton Mastro, I thought, was the biggest story. He came back. His return to the lineup, he scored 17. They didn't ease him back in. That's the type of win, if you're Penn-Trafford, you can think back towards the end of the season and maybe if things are going well, say that was the win that turned our season around. Greater Latrobe, I talked to Brad Wetzel, their head coach, afterwards. He was pretty distraught because that's conversely the type of thing that could derail a season if your team doesn't respond quickly to it. When you're up 15 at the half and you're at home, that's got to be a win, Jack. And when you're Penn-Trafford and you get that victory, it feels like you stole one.
15 points at halftime, and excuse this phrase, but it's almost like a death sentence for a lot of teams because of no shot clock as well. So you think about it, some teams could hold the ball for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. That's a little bit long, but a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And now you're looking at shrinking the game down. You're playing kind of the possession game like you would in football. So you're completely right, Sean. I think Penn-Trafford really stole one on the road. And it's interesting because this Warriors team, and I feel like we talk about at the end of the year every single season, they win 4 of their last 5 going into the playoffs. They win 5 in a row going into the playoffs. It's always this part of the season that has really been the Achilles heel for Penn-Trafford, the early to middle part of the season. And I remember talking with Coach Doug Kelly, and I asked him, what is it? And he said, simply, we've got guys coming from football that are healthier than normal, right? They had a shorter turnaround from football season into basketball, whereas in previous years, that hasn't been the case. So I think getting everybody gelled together, it's clearly showing out on the hardwood. And not to mention, we talk about Zach Feldman, how good he's been, Tyler Boss, Ben Leonard. Ethan McDonald, I think, has been one of the shining bright stars for Penn-Trafford. His size, his footwork down low, and also his touch around the rim. I think he could be a big catalyst in pushing Penn-Trafford deeper into this season and maybe even making a little playoff run.
And why this was so big, Jack, it's basically a swing game already. So you look at the standings, Penn-Trafford 3-1 because of the victory, Greater Latrobe 1-3. So things would look a lot different if both these teams were 2-2 as a result of that. So Penn-Trafford's, tied for second place with a couple other teams. They have a real shot potentially to contend for a section title. The only team ahead of them is Franklin Regional. For Greater Latrobe, they were without Robert Young in that game, and he is such a difference maker. I don't know if you've seen him in person. You would certainly remember if you did, because he just towers over everyone. So without him, they were playing shorthanded. It probably changed their style of play a little bit. So you always are going to be thinking, what if they had Robert Young? Would it be different? And they'll get another crack at Penn-Trafford in Harrison City later this season. But for the Wildcats, to me, it's crucial to see how they respond. And I know they played in the tournament afterwards and didn't fare particularly well at Plum. They lost against Knock and against Highlands. So they've lost 4 in a row now. So I think that this is going to be a real test. They're playing at Franklin Regional and then hosting McKeesport. They will need to bounce back if they want to get their season back on track. A team that's having a pretty good season, but unfortunately dropped a tough one, the Norwin boys, as they fell at home against Imani Christian. This was a rare section game. Usually we don't get section play underway until this upcoming week, but they played against Imani Christian, came up short at Norwin. Much like I mentioned, Greater Latrobe was without Young. They were without one of their better players for the Knights. Alex Graney did not play in that one. And it just seemed like they couldn't put away the Saints after they played pretty well for 3 quarters.
Really, in reading back to the article, it was the speed of Imani Christian that kind of got Norwin out of sorts. And in games like that, where you play a team that likes to play up tempo, your innate reaction is, let's play at this pace. But that's what that team wants you to do. They are baiting you to play into that style. And as a result, a lot of turnovers, a lot of shortened possessions, maybe even some sped up shots, right? So now you're out of whack. And reading the article, it was interesting to hear how Norwin kind of acknowledged, hey, the first and third quarters were ours because of the fact that we played our style of basketball. The second and fourth quarters were theirs because of the fact that they played their style of basketball. So Cam Alt's going to have this team in a very competitive spot at the end of the season. I think that it's a really good group that he's got, very experienced team, and not to mention a team that really likes to play defense. They pride themselves on defense. Ultimately, the defense didn't help them out against Imani Christian, but a lot of basketball to be played. We still have about, 6, 7 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks of section play left before playoffs. So there's a lot of things that'll change in what could be a really crowded 6A.
Yeah, and they've already got some good wins. They defeated Bell Vernon in a holiday tournament. They've already won at Mount Lebanon. They've defeated Franklin Regional at Franklin Regional as well. So they're doing some good things, but certainly they would feel a lot better had they knocked off Imani. Nate Kutch with 13 points in that one. Mario Sukas, who just made his college commitment, congrats to him. He had a dozen. Hempfield area girls, Jack, I think we've talked about this 3 consecutive years. They continue to dominate the non-section. They are very, very impressive when they're going against anyone other than their 6A section foes. They blew out Greater Latrobe at Greater Latrobe 62-37, destroyed Southmoreland. They're kind of the same spot that they were the last few years. To me, the biggest question, and I know Bob Madison is hoping that it'll be a different ending, can they do better against 6A foes? Because that has been, to your point, a phrase you used, their Achilles heel, where they're great heading into the turn of the year, and then they really start spotting when they're going against those heavyweights in the section.
I think the big difference this year is that it's a very experienced Hempfield team. I mean, brought back a lot of players that have been on those teams the last few years that, last year started 7-0 and then dropped, I think, the next 7 or 8 in a row. So I think this is a big crossroads. We talked about how Greater Latrobe and Penn-Trafford was kind of a crossroads game for those two. I think Hempfield is just at a crossroads in its season because you're getting into the depths of section play, have a really tough section game coming up against Norwin on January 12th. I think that's the litany test of all litany tests, because if Hempfield can beat Norwin in that scenario, I think everybody's eyes have to quickly shift over to Hempfield and say, are the Spartans for real this year? Are they a real team? And I know that Bob Madison, he preaches defense turning into offense, and that is exactly what you want to have installed into your program of let's start and win games defensively and allow the defense to carry over into the offensive half of the floor. So I think Hempfield, again, the game on January 12th against Norwin, that will be a huge test to see if this Spartans girls team is for real this year or if it's kind of the same thing we've seen the last few seasons.
And the games before that, at Cannon McMillan, many people think they could be the favorite, versus Upper St. Clair, the defending champs. Now, the Panthers are down, so that's probably a game that if you're Hempfield and you want to get to your goals, you should win that game, just because it looks like the Panthers are maybe ripe for the picking. But they've got some good wins. They also have lost a conference game already against Mount Lebanon. They fell against Plum, but 9-2, certainly nothing to scoff at. We'll see if they can keep it up. Lastly, our starting 5 takeaways conclude with Seton Hill, because we got to talk about both the Griffins men and women. They are perfect in PSAC play. I had a chance to see them both Friday and Saturday against Kutztown and Westchester, respectively. And it is just so impressive what these teams are doing. Now, they're kind of beating up on the East in these crossover PSAC matchups. It's going to get harder heading into the West, but you have to be thrilled with 5-0 conference records early in 2026.
Yeah, and especially in a very tough conference like the PSAC is. And, I know for a fact both these teams, and like you said, it's not going to get any easier. It's going to get tougher. I mean, you go up against the likes of Gannon, you go up against the likes of Slippery Rock. It's not going to be an easy road by any means, but that's why you need to win these games that, on paper, and if you're kind of looking at it from a third-person point of view, you should win. You need to win. You cannot have these games where, again, I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse, but you go back to Greater Latrobe and Penn-Trafford, a game where Greater Latrobe should have had it in the bag and did not. It's games like that can really start to snowball out of control, and then you're starting to run down the hill, and you can't stop yourself. So I think that for Seton Hill, good that they are winning games that they should win, but now it's the question, can they keep winning and keep it going deeper into PSAC West play?
And we also saw a game that I think was a surprising outcome, an upset to an extent, as Seton Hill men knocked off Westchester, who are the favorites or who were the favorites in the preseason polls in the East. Now, Westchester's had a couple of slip-ups, but they were coming off of a win at IUP, so that's a big one for Ben Wilkins' squad. Certainly, you kind of expected the women to take care of business this weekend. They did, but ultimately that was a very impressive win for the Griffins guys to stay perfect as well. That'll do it for our starting 5 takeaways. We quickly transition into our plays of the week, and we'll begin with the Greater Latrobe boys. We talked about this game. Everything was working in the first half for the Wildcats against Penn-Trafford, especially for Dom Scarton, who hit a ridiculous shot to beat the second quarter buzzer and push the Greater Latrobe lead to 15 with myself and John Bainbridge on the call.
Now down to 10. It is a bonus scenario if the Wildcats are fouled, by the way. Oh, that's difficult for Scarton. My goodness! What a shot for Scarton. That was unbelievable. And he has given his team a 15-point lead.
Steph Curry range there.
Terrific shot there from Scarton. That was impressive. However, we'll stay with plays of the week in that same game on the Penn-Trafford side. The Warriors, they had the last laugh, and their big rally got a massive boost on a heave from Ben Leonard to end the third quarter, with myself and John again providing the commentary.
Billy Beaner, he should be a litigator, man. He's solving a lot of issues here tonight.
And it goes! Leonard knocks it in! And could that be the momentum that Penn-Trafford needed? Leonard on a heave at the buzzer. We head to the fourth, but it is just an 8-point game here on WSN.
We continue plays of the week with the Southmoreland boys, and on that very same night, the Scotties won a Westmoreland County clash against Ligonier Valley, highlighted by Ty Warwick's buzzer beater to extend the Southmoreland lead heading into the locker room, as detailed by Dan Flickinger and Greg Bizignator.
Balancer, Margulis Graber tried to buy one. Here's Pritz. No good from distance. Rebound for Chapman. Stanley Chapman with 5 seconds kicks it back out. Balancer moves it left wing. Warwick feeling it from 3. Yes, sir, for number 11. Ty Warwick will give Southmoreland a 31-27 lead going into halftime. How about it?
Yeah, good shooting that court, especially towards the end of the half there for Southmoreland.
Good stuff from Ty Warwick. And by the way, Jack, he's a big fan of us here at WSN. So we will wrap up plays of the week with Seton Hill men, and the Griffins continued their stellar run through the PSAC over the weekend, beginning on Friday with the win against Kutztown. The top play came on a connection between Rashad Williams and Kedrick Curtis to seal the victory, with myself providing the audio.
And they get it to Williams. A beautiful dish, and Curtis does a chin up on the rim. Williams has been impressive. Curtis, an emphatic finish.
That will do it for plays of the week. And Jack, we now move on to our team of the week, the Jeannette boys. Well deserved. Not just what they did the past couple games, but what they've done all season. They are now 9-1. They're perfect 4-0 in section play. They continue to show that they can beat just about any team that they go against. That included a victory against 6A Norwin. This team is absolutely rolling and picking up right where they left off to end last season.
When I talk to people about Jeannette boys basketball, or at least it gets brought up, there's this kind of like fear that is struck in people when they talk about Jeannette. And it's, oh man, we got to go against Jeannette today. It's not going to be good. And that is a testament to how this team has grown, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years, where, you look at Kamani Brown's career, and it kind of has the success of Jeannette basketball has progressed with his career, and rightfully so, because he has been really the leader of this team. And when he was a sophomore, Jeannette was competitive, very good, but it was GCC that we talked about so much with Tyree Turner and Franco Alvarez and all the big players that GCC had. And now the tides have turned, and now it's Jeanette's turn to be that top dog in 2A, and clearly have shown that. I got to say, Sean, if Jeannette runs into Swickley Academy in the playoffs at all, that is going to be the matchup to watch for the ages. With what happened last year, how Jeannette simply just suffocated Swickley Academy. If I'm not mistaken, Swickley Academy had like 25 points the whole game. They had averaged like 70 on the year. It was an incredible win for Jeannette. And it just feels that ever since that win, Jeannette has been on this high. And the question remains, can it stay on this high? And I think that it really can because of the personnel it has. You've got Kamani Brown, Marcus McGowan, Noah Sunder, Xavier Odoricio Farrow, Jace Powell. I mean, these are the 5 starters that have been the starters for at least 2 years. So when you can have that roll over from one year to the next, I mean, it's probably a cakewalk for Coach Adrian Batts.
Well, first off, Kimani Brown, congrats. 1,000 points achieved in their most recent game, 67-52 win against Bishop Canavan, playing out at North Allegheny. They have 3 seniors in that starting lineup, but even the 2 juniors, McGowan and Powell, they are, as you said, very experienced. All these guys have been playing roles basically since their freshman year. Some of them, like Brown, have been stars since their freshman year. And they win against Bishop Canavan. They blow out Frazier. They defeated Norwin. They've won at Riverview in section play. They blew out Bentworth. They blew out Cal. They've got Springdale upcoming, and then at GCC on Friday. I don't know that that's going to be the same caliber of game as what we've typically seen between Jayhawks and Centurions. GCC has lost so much. It's basically a completely new team whereas Jeannette has all that experience and talent. But to me, this is another championship or bust season for Jeannette. They broke through last year. They dominated against Union in the championship game. And I look at Adrian Batt's crew as they've got to be at least the co-favorites again this year, along with Sewickley. And I think at this point, you give the benefit of the doubt to Jeannette because they've won it before.
Without question, and not to mention they've defeated Sewickley. They had to beat Sewickley, Sean, to get to the championship last year. And if you remember last year, everybody was talking about Sewickley Academy, and rightfully so. And to this year, and
they're year, undefeated this year. Yep.
Absolutely, and it carries over. So of course they're going to be talked about. But clearly, every single superhero or superstar has a kryptonite, and I think that Jeannette is the kryptonite to Sewickley Academy. And again, if these two run into each other in the playoffs, I'm not going to look at it and say, man, I think Sewickley's going to run away with it simply because of the height. No, not at all, because I think that Jeannette can hang with the best of them. And, obviously Sewickley gets a lot of the headlines because of the height that they have. But Jeannette should be right there with the talent it has, the experience and the pedigree that Coach Adrian Batts has had for 10 plus years at Jeannette. I mean, for many, many seasons, right? So this is a really good season for the Jayhawks. And again, I think the big thing that you said was championship or bust. And that is what it feels like because of how much experience and really how everything is kind of laid out perfectly, especially with a lot of teams being down in Section 1.
Yeah, and again, they play bigger teams as well. They open the season knocking off in lopsided fashion Indiana, which is a pretty good 5A team as well. So much deserved our team of the week, the Jeannette boys. Back-to-back for Jeannette because we had the girls last time we did this show. Lastly, let's take a look ahead. And Jack, we mentioned it's a very busy week. Here are some of the notable games upcoming. We'll begin on the boys' side. Monday, Kiski area at Shaler. Tuesday, Central Catholic at Norwin. We will have that on our airwaves. Greater Latrobe at Franklin Regional. You're doing that game as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And I will be at Norwin. And then Derry area at York. Thursday, Penn-Trafford at Gateway. Friday, we will have coverage Upper St. Clair at Hempfield area. Also, that same night, Burrell at Valley, Greensburg, Salem at Bell Vernon area, Southmoreland, Mount Pleasant, and Jeannette at GCC. And then Saturday, Hempfield at Gateway. Girls action coverage that you and I will have together on Monday. Mount Lebanon at Norwin, Freeport at Burrell, Southmoreland at Mount Pleasant, GCC at Ligonier Valley, and Greensburg Salem at Franklin Regional. Tuesday, Hempfield area makes the trek to Cannon-McMillan. Wednesday, at Seahawk at Derry area. Thursday, another game that we will have on Westmoreland Sports Network, Shadyside Academy at GCC in that championship rematch. Upper St. Clair at Hempfield, Greater Latrobe at Greensburg Salem, Bell Vernon at Mount Pleasant, Winchester Thurston at Jeannette. Friday, Norwin at Cannon-McMillan. That is a massive one, no doubt. Penn-Trafford at Kiski area. And then Norwin, another stiff test on Saturday, playing at South Fayette. And then on the college side, some big doubleheaders on Wednesday and Saturday. Seton Hill travels to Cal on Wednesday, and Pitt Greensburg will play at Penn State Barron. Saturday, Clarion travels to play at Seton Hill. We will have coverage of that on WSN. And then Pitt Greensburg makes a pretty short trek down to Oakland to play the Carlos Celtics in a doubleheader. Jack, anything jump out to you?
Like you said, Sean, that big game for, what was it, Norwin? Yeah, Norwin at Cannon-McMillan for the girls on Friday. I think that's a really, really big one because of how good Cannon-McMillan has been. I think there will be a lot of shuffling amongst the top there in 6A, but I'm also looking at Penn-Trafford at Gateway on the boys' side on Thursday. You're coming off a very emotional win against Greater Latrobe. Obviously, you probably have had some games since then, but still, that can be a game where you can secretly rest on your laurels some, and maybe you start to see teams, or at least Penn-Trafford, be like, we can maybe take a game off against a Gateway that, is coming off a very heartbreaking loss against Franklin Regional. This is a very good Gateway team, Sean. It's a very good Gateway team, brought back a lot of players from last year, obviously. So I think that Penn-Trafford Gateway game, that one I definitely have highlighted for Thursday.
Yeah, Michael Bruce McCroman is an absolute baller for the Gators. Yeah, it should be a fun week indeed because, teams finishing up the holiday tournaments. Now it's pretty much full bore back into section play. And of course, the playoffs already start to come into the picture because all these games now in early January, they're going to be counting just the same as the games that are played in February as well. Jack, that's going to do it for another episode of the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast. Of course, follow us on all forms of social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll be back again next week and hopefully every subsequent week for the rest of the regular season and beyond. For Jack Ridenhour, Sean Myers signing off. We'll catch you again next week on the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast.
This is the Westmoreland on the Hardwood podcast. on the Westmoreland Sports Network.